We started talking about incidents management, and we've talked about problem management, and we've talked about change management, and and we've also spoken about configuration management. So there's a few managements that we've done, right? And here's another one, continuity management. So just putting that in context, right, with your incidents management, as issues come up, incidents, which were where some kind of service was disrupted in some way, and that might be your network, or it could be your actual application was disrupted. Then that had to be resolved somehow, and so we have a method of doing that. And we talked about the IT service management, the frameworks and the standards that can be applied in IT service management. For example, in ITIL, we have an incidents management process, and which involves service desk technology, for example, like OTRS, where a ticket is produced, that type of thing. So we talked about incidents management. And problem management is the focus there was on actually finding the root cause of an incident, and that's the thing that we refer to as the problem, so that that can be um, uh, resolved as well. And that may lead to the next point, which is change management, which is more than just following on from problem management, but it includes following on from problem management, because often when we do a root cause analysis in a problem, we will find that something in the system itself needs to be upgraded, I guess you'd say, or improved or changed. And so then we have change management. And you'll remember in our notes about that, that there was a lot that we focused on control. And so change management is really about changing our systems, but also keeping it stable. So we're trying to find that sort of happy medium between changing and keeping things stable, stabilizing them through quite strict control measures. And then that led us on to this concept of configuration management, which is basically just recording everything and having that record easily available. Having a database actually with our configuration management, which is going to show a snapshot of our system, and that's going to be updated. And so there's going to be inputs from our problem management and our change management as we go along. Well, that leads us to this topic here, which is continuity management. Um, Continuity, things continuing. That's what we're talking about. Continuity, things continuing, as opposed to them not continuing. So in other words, this is really kind of raising the stakes when we're talking about continuity management. We're talking about issues which can impact our business so much that if we didn't attend to them, then and plan for them, it could be a threat to the business continuing on. So that's why in today's lesson we'll talk about disaster recovery, and we'll talk about planning for continuity, the disaster recovery plans, and that's all part of our continuity management. So just to give you a little bit of background, that I actually, my last job before I was a teacher, now I've been a teacher for a long time, I have to admit, but last job I had before I was a teacher, I used to work in a telephone company in Australia. It was the telephone company at that time. They were introducing a competitor, and that was Telecom Australia. So it was kind of like the situation of QTEL here before they introduced Vodafone. And so at the time that I joined Telecom Australia, they were introducing a competitor as well, which was Optus Australia, and they also have Vodafone as a competitor there. But during the time I was there, they were going through all of these changes. And my last job that I had there, I was an account manager, and my accounts were internal accounts. And my account was the mobile phones division. And one of the things that I had to do with them is, well, we had to sign contracts for IT support. When I'm talking about IT support, I'm not talking about sort of just a service desk. I'm talking about, how many programmers they're going to have, how much of the time on the mainframe computer they're going to have, and that type of thing, because they had to pay us for it. So I was in the information technology division and department, and so that's what we used to do. So one of the things that I had to do with them is come up with a contract for their disaster recovery, and that was money. Okay, it was funny
Okay.
money. It was money paid within the organization So
Right.
they got money
Like
from their customers, and they paid some of that
شو
money.
اسمه؟
Not sure if you meant to
اعرف
be.
حق ويندوز، لعبتي ويندوز.
Yeah. So I'm going to mute you guys because I'm just sort of getting some random stuff coming up there. But if you need to talk, you can unmute yourself. So one of the things we had to do is come up with a disaster recovery plan with them, and that cost money. And so the first talking point that we'd have, we'd sit down in a meeting with them. I'd sit down in a meeting with these guys, and we'd talk about, all right, so let's put some dollar figures on your data. Let's put some dollar figures on your on your applications. When I say put some dollar figures on it, would be, for example, how much did it cost you to build those things? How much would you lose if you lost those systems? And when business managers start thinking in those terms, it actually comes out to quite big money. And so that's the type of situation we're talking about here. It's sort of existential. When I say existential, is would your business be able to continue if you didn't have this data? Would your business be able to continue if you didn't have this hardware? If you didn't have this network? And in a case like, for example, in a mobile phone division of a telephone company, yeah, not for very long, especially if you've got customer competitors. You can't really continue in a business if your computer systems go down. So there's a very, very high cost of losing data, of losing as losing system going forward. And so as a result, when we put that number in our heads, then we can see where the right context for what kind of things we should be doing to make sure that that doesn't happen. And maybe that's going to be expensive. So maybe we have to have some heavy redundancy. That is, multiple um, duplicated sites with duplicated applications running with duplicated data. And there's a lot of sort of managing that goes with that, and it's a difficult thing, and it's an expensive thing. But maybe we need to do that because we can't. Because if something happens to part of our systems, then we have a very bad problem, and which affects whether we stay in business or not. So that's what we mean by continuity. So I hope that's put that in perspective, and maybe we can sort of talk about this. Now, I don't plan to go through all of these slides. There's like 40 or 50 of them. And I think maybe we'll just do the first 12 or 13 slides or something like that. So don't worry, I'm not going to sort of keep you here all day. I never do that anyway. So we got lots of time to sort of get through here. But the points that we want to focus on here, these two acronyms, the BCM and the ITSCM. So BCM, Business Continuity Management. I hope that you have an idea in your head just from the words what that might be. Information Technology Service Continuity Management. So the idea is that the business itself, the top of the organization, people who are not IT people, should have some kind of an idea on what needs to happen for their business to stay afloat. Um, and then the IT department is going to look at how they support that and what it is that they need to do to make sure that the business stays viable. And so those two ways of looking at things come up with these two different sort of plans, I guess you could say, a plan for business continuity management and a plan for information technology support continuity management. And so there's some other words that sort of come with this. As you see here, we got the big red button and the big red plaque about disaster recovery. Disasters do happen. And if a disaster happens to a business, that might take out a large data center or a networking center. And nowadays, a lot of this, of course, is migrated into the cloud. And so that disaster recovery could be limited a bit because we might put a lot of our data up on a cloud server like the Amazon cloud servers or whatever, in which case we're paying them to do this for us. So it's quite possible that the way we manage our business now is we might hand off a lot of this liability to them. And that's not something that should be done without thinking about it either, right? I mean, how much do you trust Amazon, to protect your data? Well, hopefully, so far so good, right? Or Google or whatever. these companies that have these large sort of server farms in places like Iceland, um, they they will very happily provide you with server support at a location there, and they have all the network support, and you can run everything over the cloud. Uh, they'll quite happily to do that, but you have to sort of consider, well, what other things could impact? What are the risks involved with that? I mean, what if there was a volcano in Iceland? Maybe we need to have another sort of backup somewhere else, and maybe we'd have a sort of a cold backup site. They talk about hot backups and warm backups and cold backups for disaster recovery. The idea of disaster recovery is, what would we do if something sort of took out our networks, our people, or our servers somewhere? What are the things that we would do in that event? So we could look at that in terms of emergency response, as it says there, crisis management, disaster recovery, and business continuity. Business continuity, I hope you got the idea already from that, is, will the business survive? It's that kind of bottom line thing, all right? A disaster, okay, maybe that would knock our business back a week or so. But continuity, what we're talking about there is, next year at this time, are we still in business? We need to make sure that we've managed the risks so that, at least from an IT point of view, there's nothing that's going to knock us out of business in terms of a disaster. And so that's what we mean here by this risk management. So the business itself, the idea here of the Venn diagram with the IT service support continuity management sort of plan being inside these other ways of looking at things is, hopefully you see there that the IT service continuity management is there to support those other things. And they're actually going to be driving it. Okay, so things that have to be considered in the event. In the event of what? Natural disaster. Okay, so Fukushima, I don't know if you ever heard of that. So there was an earthquake off the coast of Japan, and there was a tidal wave, and then there was this flooding um, of a nuclear facility, which back in 2013, I think it was, and or 2011 or whatever. But anyways, that nuclear facility is still offline. A lot of nuclear waste went out into the ocean, and basically a bunch of people in that city drowned because of the tidal wave. But the entire province was basically knocked out. If you had your IT servers in the area, it would have been a very bad problem. Um, so a very bad problem for Japan generally, also because they lost power. The nuclear plant provided power for the entire um, province, and so people there didn't have power. So if you're in the adjacent city, what do you do for a backup for that? And probably you already know some of the answers to that, right? You would have your own sort of hot backup power, as well as other facilities. So, for example, even here at the college, we have, to make sure that our records are not lost. We have a number of sort of plans in place. But one of the things that we have, and as I said, there's a number of these. One of the things that we have is we have diesel generators that will provide power to the servers and to the air conditioners that keep them alive. Because without air conditioners, your computers aren't going to last very long. So yeah, so all of those things need to sort of be considered. This diagram here is showing you what I'd call a spectrum. A spectrum is a broad range of things. From the green is things that are what are, if it's green, we like that. And if it's this red here, we don't like that. And the line down the middle between them is where we would say we're getting into what we call existential threats. Existential, the word existential coming from the word exist. And so to exist or not to exist, as Hamlet would say in his play. I don't know if you're familiar with the play about Hamlet. To be or not to be, that's the question. Or basically, whether will we still be as a business after this? That's what we're talking about. If we have a crisis, a disaster, or a catastrophe, this really is an existential threat. It could be that we're not in business after that. And so that's the level of concern that we need to have for those things. And that's the level of detail that we have to have in our planning to make sure that we avoid those risks or manage those risks. These other things, like this thing here, right, where the little red thing is, that's the things we talked about at the start of our course, which is, oh, there's an incident comes in. And so we manage it through the incident management software. And maybe it's low impact or high or whatever, but it's an incident. It's managed through the management software. And people, when I say the incident management software, we have a ticket and we have people on it. With these other things up here in the continuity management, it's kind of beyond the idea of a ticket. It's at such a critical issue that we're not going to sort of put a ticket in the system to solve this. We're going to get everybody on board, sort of addressing that catastrophe now. All right, so disruption, that would be on the left of that diagram that we just talked about. So that's where we're having our incidents. Disasters, that's on the right. Disasters are things that affect, do we stay in business? So an incident management plan, that handles the things on the left. When I say on the left, I'm talking about this diagram here, right? On the left. And disaster recovery plan, that's handling the things on the right, the things that affect whether we stay in business or not. So there's some terms that you need to come to grips with, and they sort of relate to this. So we're putting some numbers on this, right? Management is difficult job. And there's a lot of sort of unknowns. So what the managers try to do is they try to make it manageable. And one of the ways of doing that is put numbers on things. Now, sometimes those numbers, yeah, they might, there's a little bit of imagination in it. There might be a bit of creativity in the number. Number might not mean as much as it looks like, but just having a number is a good start. And of course, we can tweak that and get that number more refined later on. So we can apply some numbers here. And one of the numbers here is we've got a number relating to time, recovery time objective. And so what this is a number that the managers are going to put there, and they're going to say, look, we need to recover within X time, minutes, seconds, hours, days. If we don't, then we got an existential threat on our hands, right? So if we can recover in this time, we've met that. And we'll call that number our recovery time objective. In other words, we need to set our plans so that we get all our stuff back by this time. And it might be a few hours, might be a few days, whatever. And there's number of things that will affect that. It could be things to do with the legal. It could be just business analysis on our customers, etc. Could be regulation, lots of other things. Then we have another similar one, but this is going to be a different number. Recovery point objective. That's going to be about the data. All right. So how much of this data can we lose and still stay in business? So imagine you're a bank. All right. And your network services go down. Your recovery time objective would be something like, yeah, okay, maybe we can do without our ATMs for a day. And after that, what's going to happen is we're going to have a mass exodus of our customers. They're going to go to every other bank because they can't get money out of ours. They're going to withdraw their funds when we come back online and change over to a different bank. So maybe we can do it for a day. Or maybe our customers are more laid back. Maybe we can do it for 3 days. We don't know. Or maybe there's a certain percentage of our customers that will start moving away. And after 1 day, it's this percent. After 2 days, and we'll decide that the critical point is after a certain percentage of our customers started moving away. That could be our recovery time objective, a day or two, something like that. Now, the same bank with its ATMs, how much data between us and our customers could we lose before it starts threatening our business? Well, that's going to be kind of a different thing, right? Customers have been doing all kinds of transactions. Um, of the transactions for the last 10 minutes, the transactions for the last day, can we lose that? And I think that's going to be a much smaller number. I'm not a banking expert, but that's my guess, is that would be a small number. And the reason is because there's a lot of transactions going every day, right? And that's money. And you just need to have track on that. And so I'm sure that they have in place very careful systems to make sure none of that sort of gets away very far. So for example, yeah, the network goes down between the ATM machine and the server. So that's okay because we've got some data storage on the ATM. That still could cause a problem because maybe the ATM could be destroyed. Uh, Anyways, a maximum tolerable outage, again, looking at it from a existential point of view, the maximum amount of time that the business can survive without the process, right? And maybe that's 2 days, maybe, this is related to, this time thing. Maybe it's a week, but after that, we probably need to start looking to bankruptcy court or something because we're not going to be able to um, continue in business. So what is an IT disaster? We've got this word that hopefully is not new to you, availability. Availability, again, managers like numbers. And so availability is going to be a number. It's going to be a percentage. So we're going to have in our service level agreements, we're going to have a percentage number that we're going to specify. 99.9% availability. So that means that, in a month, so many hours we could be not available. If it goes beyond that, then we've broken our service level agreement. Okay, so that's fine. But what about if the availability drops to a point where it starts to affect the actual survival of the business? And so a disaster could have that happen, right? Where our services or our networks, our hardware is not available within the company, and therefore threatens our business. So the worst case scenario of a disaster, as it says there, what if all your equipment and data in the data center was destroyed? You need to think about that. If that happened, what would be the cost? What if you couldn't get in to fix the data center? And what if you lost the staff? Um, what would that cost you? What should you do to avoid that risk? Do you have to have redundancy in place, other people at another place, etc.? And your planning should be around that. This diagram's got, this slide's got a nice little diagram in the bottom which shows lots of the sources of something that could cause a disaster. As it says there, you could have servers crash, you could have fires, severe weather, unexpected updates, etc. All of those things could cause some quite bad disasters. And okay, so we got 10 minutes, but we're going to stop pretty soon. So as it says here, what we want, and it makes us feel better generally, but hopefully it keeps our business, hopefully we're not just in business and just sort of running on luck, oh, well, we haven't had a disaster, so we probably won't have a disaster. We're not taking that point of view. We're taking the point of view of, well, there is a risk of disaster, and we have allocated these resources to reducing that risk. And we've come up with this disaster recovery plan. So if there is a disaster, we can get back up in this amount of time with these resources, etc. And there's you can read books on this. It's quite a well thought out sort of idea. Now, I introduced this topic with my experience in telecom, and that was nice. I enjoyed working in Telecom Australia, but I just want to mention now, because it's sort